This is not a conversation that I want to have, but it's a conversation we need to have on another edition of Southwest Bias.
Get that stuff out of here. It's Southwest Bias.
Of course, brought to you by Branded Bills. Elevate your brand with Branded Bills, just like I am right now. The perfect headwear and apparel. Use code PHNX for 20% off your first order. And of course, we're coming live from Studio K, presented by Circle K. Download the Circle K app. Join the Inner Circle for free. Save yourself some money. I've got, of course, PHNX Cardinals' own Bo Brack. I am Erik Ruby, and we are here to talk about the happiest subject in all of sports, and that is, was your top 5 draft pick a bust? It's a little bit of a brutal term, bust, because Marvin Harrison Jr. has not been bad this year. He has not been a complete zero. He's not been a no-show, and it's not like he hasn't had moments. But Bo, if I told you now, or let's say 6-7 months ago, that Marvin Harrison Jr. has had the season that he's had so far, you would consider it a disappointment, would you not?
No doubt about it. I mean, the hype surrounding Marvin Harrison Jr. Was like in the next stratosphere. I mean, what people thought was he's not just pro ready, but he's star ready, right? He's coming out of Ohio State, 28 touchdowns over his last 2 seasons. His dad has a bust in Canton. You know, this work ethic matched with this unbelievable skill set and size. You thought, hey, this guy's can't miss. And you talk about the performances, the flashes, those are too far in between as far as what we're seeing from Marvin Harrison Jr., especially recently. I mean, we're seeing Marvin Harrison Jr., 2 catches for 32 yards, couldn't take down a touchdown pass that was perfectly placed by Kyler Murray. Great play by Christian Gonzalez, but at some point you're looking for your top wide receiver, one of your big investments, to go up and win and make those plays. And we just haven't seen it enough from Marvin Harrison Jr. You know, over the last couple of weeks, I mean, 72 yards receiving combined from Marvin Harrison Jr., where you thought that was just going to be a weekly average for the guy. Pretty pedestrian rookie season, definitively not a bust, but is there cause for concern? Is the very thick sheet of ice that we were expecting as far as the bustability getting maybe a layer thinner? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think it's understandable for fans to have a little bit of concern.
Yeah.
Right. And we've had conversations, in fact, recently, as far as what is going on with this offense. Who is the quote unquote fall guy, right? Who do you turn to and say, you know, that's the reason? And I think there's a valid argument to say that Marvin Harrison Jr. has not been put in the best position to put up monster numbers in his rookie season, but it's kind of beyond numbers, right? A player like that, and a player like Marvin Harrison Jr., who sure was not the number 1 pick in the draft, but by a lot of measures were people's best player or best prospect, and just didn't play quarterback, so he didn't get taken in the top 3. But it was a surefire at the 4th pick when the Arizona Cardinals took Marvin Harrison Jr. Nobody walked away from that selection thinking, really?
Right.
Why would you do that? In fact, it was like the perfect pick. It's like the Cardinals need a weapon like him bad. Him and Kyler Murray can play together on this great level. They're both incredible athletes with wonderful instincts, high draft picks. Like, it was the second coming of what you hope to be another Larry Fitzgerald-like player. And I know that's a high standard to hold people to, but the way that he played in college and the way that it was treated when he was drafted, he deserves to be held to some certain standard like that, right? And so when you're looking at this and you're looking at the Arizona Cardinals offense coming into this season, and you're thinking about all the wonderful, bountiful options they have alongside Marvin Harrison Jr., you kind of feel like there's no excuse for him. And I don't know if we're sitting back here and starting to rethink the pick, and we'll revisit maybe, like, did the Arizona Cardinals mess up by not drafting a less flashy pick? But I personally still believe that Marv can get to the place that we want him to get to, but I'd be lying if I thought that it would be this roundabout way to get there. And maybe you feel slightly differently. I felt like the dude was going to walk in the league one of the best receivers, and that's just not the case.
Right. And to add some context, and we'll get to who's to blame as far as the whelming rookie season by Marvin Harrison Jr. And you can dress it up. I've seen people say, well, this is what Larry Fitzgerald did 2 decades ago. Different league now, more of a passing league. And, oh, yeah, by the way, Larry Fitzgerald didn't have a 2-time Pro Bowler throw him in the football. He had Josh McCown throwing him in the football in his rookie season. You know, more context as far as what the expectations were for Marvin Harrison Jr. He was a Heisman finalist over a year ago today, right? I mean, at the wide receiver position, Biletnikoff, winner, the only Ohio State wide receiver to go back-to-back 1,000-yard receiving seasons. And then you look at the draft, what it produced, what it was expected to produce. It was supposed to be one of the most wide receiver talent-rich drafts, and there was really no question outside of some people who had like their hipster, like, Malik Neighbors is my wide receiver one. Roma Dunze is my wide receiver one.
Right.
And it's like, they look like crazy people at the time. Now they're walking with their chest puffed out proud, like, see, guys, maybe it was a little bit closer than you expected. And there's a debate there. And that's where you say shame on you as far as, okay, who's this on? Is this on Marvin Harrison Jr.? Is it on Kyler Murray? Is it on Drew Petzing? Is it on the organization? Whatever it is, it's shame on you, and it's an indictment on you that we're even having this conversation.
This should
debate.
not be happening.
Right.
And you know, I think the reality is, Bo, it's not just one of them.
Right.
It's all three. Right? Like this, something like this does not happen if there's not a disconnect in multiple different ways, right? Let me read off to you Marvin Harrison Jr.'s stats from just his final season in Ohio State. 12 games, 67 receptions, 1,200 yards, 18 per reception, 14 touchdowns, averaged just over 100 yards per game. Okay? In the NFL so far, in 14 games played, 47 receptions, 687 yards, 7 touchdowns, an average of 14.6, which sounds all right. It's not even top 50 in the NFL. And I understand it's a different league, right? You're going from college to pros. It's going to get more difficult. You're not on a win now team like Ohio State would be deemed in the college football playoffs and whatnot. But to me, there's just too much of a fall off to not sit back and be like, I cannot be concerned about this currently. I think, I don't know if it's fan bias for myself. I don't know if it's just wanting to believe, but I refuse to accept that this is the final product, that this is who Marvin Harrison Jr. will be for his whole career, because it's an okay wide receiver.
Yeah.
It's a good wide receiver. You want on your team. It's a good threat. The Arizona Cardinals did not spend the 4th overall pick on Marvin Harrison Jr. to walk away and say that was a good wide receiver. Right. We thought generational. Right. We thought somebody who could come in here and maybe put up the best numbers in the league, or at least get close to it in his rookie season, and then look to the next couple of years and say, is this the best 1-2 combo in the league? The best quarterback wide receiver duo? You mentioned it in a Southwest Bias in previous weeks where Dan Orlovsky did his top 20 QB wide receiver combos. Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison Jr. were not there.
Yeah,
that's not acceptable.
Not in the top 20.
No.
It's crazy. It really is crazy. And when you start to kind of put together and bake your blame pie.
What flavor is your blame pie?
I think I start with probably the play caller.
Okay.
And I think that's the main ingredient, because it's unfair to say, hey, Marvin Harrison Jr., go out and be Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb in just your first season, even though those guys had unbelievable, debuts themselves. But their usage, the way that they get schemed up and they get, put into the rhythm of the offense, you just don't see that. You talk about Marvin Harrison Jr. over 14 yards per catch. That's great. But then you look at, those are his opportunities. It's kind of boom or bust. It's like he's not getting high percentage throws or plays going his way. You think as a primary X, you could scheme him up. You could get him more kind of a couple layup throws. And I thought as far as the open to the Patriots game, they did a decent job of that. 2 throws, Patriots adjusted, and unfortunately, they didn't play that game of chest back and readjust. It just became, hey, Marvin Harrison Jr., go routes, corner routes. And that's about it. And it's like, come on. I know Drew Petzing he's a bright offensive mind. You got a deeper playbook than that. Let's get him more involved. And, there's some good and bad here, right? I mean, obviously you say, this isn't who he's going to be. This is not a finished product. And there's an excitement level, but more of a frustration level with that, just because what we know to be true about Marvin Harrison Jr. And then also you have to take into consideration the Cardinals' offense. It's like they've been telling us straight to our face, we want to run the football. We are a just ground and pound game. And it's like, okay, guys, but you have Marvin Harrison Jr. It's like, yeah, we also have James Conner. We also took a tight end in the 3rd round. We got a left tackle we invested a 6th overall pick in. We took another, offensive lineman in the 3rd round and Isaiah Adams, we are going to run the football. And we thought, okay, well, that's just going to open things up for Marvin Harrison Jr. And unfortunately, year 1, it hasn't happened.
Okay, so the next question I'm about to present, the answer does not come solely based off of Marvin Harrison Jr. alone, but the context in which this all falls. Did the Arizona Cardinals make the wrong draft pick due to philosophy, performance, how you were going to use the guy? That's a question we're going to tackle after I remind everybody that this edition of Southwest Bias is brought to you by Branded Bills. You can always elevate your brand with Branded Bills. It's the perfect headwear and apparel. I have like 8 to 10, I don't know for sure, ASU hats because I gotta rock my Big 12 champions. There's no better place to do it than with Branded Bills. They have everything: snapbacks, truckers, fitted, beanies, or tees. Branded Bills has you covered with performance and style, so much so that I'm literally getting Branded Bills hats thrown my direction.
Came in hot.
Hey, this thing's pretty sexy, I can't lie. I mean, these rubber emblems, they are so good. They keep on having new designs out there, and you can make your brand stand apart from the crowd.
Imagine your logo looking that fresh. Elevate your brand. It's
Max,
not just a campus collection. It could be your brand.
It could be your collection. I mean, Max, our sales guy, threw me an ASU hat. He very easily could have grabbed one of the PHNX hats that's in there because we have a PHNX custom hat. In fact, a couple that you can also order from Branded Bills. They can have partnerships with you, but they do have partnerships with ASU and U of A as far as it's a local company. There we go. Hey, I'm holding on to this, Max. I'm not letting this thing go. I've been begging Max to get one of these because I've been trying to get my grubby little hands on them, and he just made a massive mistake. Massive mistake.
Not going back.
This is going in my shirt. Watch, this is mine. Okay. That is how much I care about Branded Bills, and you can head to brandedbills.com. Use code PHNX for 20% off your first order. I also love our friends over at Empire today. I spent a lot of time in Studio A on the Suns show, and let me tell you, I was there when Empire today installed the flooring in our Studio A, and I thought to myself, man, we beat this floor up. I don't know exactly how this is going to hold up. In fact, right now they're setting up and changing the entire set on our floors, but Empire today installed the floors beautifully. They have held up wonderfully. It was fast, it was easy, it was convenient, and they did it all in the best way possible because they didn't just go out and offer the lowest prices. No, they said, we're going to put the best flooring in your home, and sometimes that means we can't give you the dirt cheap prices, but it's okay because you could still get money off just for listening to Southwest Bias. Schedule a free in-home estimate today, and all listeners of Southwest Bias can receive a $350 off discount when they use promo code PHNX. Some restrictions do apply. See EmpireToday.com/PHNX for details. So mixing everything together, we're baking our blame pie, Bo Brack. You had a little bit of, hey, this is on Marv. You had a little bit on, hey, it's on Petzing. A little bit on, hey, it's on Kyler. And then you have this overarching Monty Ossenfort philosophy, Jonathan Gannon philosophy of building this team as a run-first, ground-and-pound offense. And I feel like that's the crust. That is what's kind of encapsulating everything and what holds all of the blame. So the question is simple. Not on the fact that Marvin Harrison Jr. is bad or a bad pick, but was he the wrong pick? Was spending a top 4 asset in this draft on a skill position player that you do not emphasize in your offense the wrong decision?
No, because I still believe in the skill set for Marvin Harrison Jr. I think that there is just a little bit of a slower burn as far as getting Marvin Harrison Jr. acclimated to the NFL level, getting him up to speed with his quarterback and his offense, playing within this offense. I hope I'm correct in that assessment because there are some good players that they passed on here. I mean, I talked about the Neighbors option there who went 6 to the Giants and they spam him the football and he looks good. And you've got other wide receivers in this draft from BTA, Brian Thomas Jr. for the Jags and Ladd McConkey for the Chargers having statistically better seasons. And then also speaking of the Chargers, Joe Alt. Would you be better suited to take a tackle to, bookend with Paris Johnson Jr., and then you just kind of set it and forget it for the next, 4 to 5 years, the next half decade on your offensive line? I still push back and say no, because I don't think any of those guys have a larger upside still than Marvin Harrison Jr.
I don't disagree with you. If I'm going back in time, even knowing what I know right now, I still want the Cardinals to draft Marvin Harrison Jr. But it's an interesting thought experiment, though, about this whole conversation that, of course, PHNX Cardinals was so heavy into leading up to the draft of, does Monty Ossenfort trade back for more assets instead of cashing in on a top 4 pick? And maybe instead of using that number 4 pick on somebody else, I mean, Joe Alt would be fantastic on this team. I mean, if you think about what they are trying to do as far as a run-first group and building your offensive line to protect a quarterback like Kyler Murray, who has shown that even with options like Trey McBride and Michael Wilson, that you can have an okay, not air raid, but passing attack offense, right? You start thinking about, is that valuable? But I'm also wondering if you do package number 4 and you move down a little bit, right? Maybe you take an edge, first edge off the board. Latu, that went from UCLA,
far down there.
right? That's down at 15. That's a big drop down, but it is a position of need. Is it not as much the fact that Marvin was the wrong pick at 4, but picking at 4 was the wrong move?
I mean, if the deal presented itself, I think, Monty Ossenfort would have weighed the pros and cons out of that. I mean, he is somebody that's already shown in his 2 drafts as Cardinals general manager that he's willing to wheel and deal if it makes sense. And I don't think, the deal presented itself for him to trade out of the caliber of player, the opportunity to trade out and draft the caliber of player of Marvin Harrison Jr. Like we see Latu all the way down there at 15. So you add another first round pick potentially. So you've got 3 in this draft or an extra this upcoming draft. I just don't think that puts you overall in a better shape than drafting Marvin Harrison Jr. Sure, have the season that he's had, but with still the upside that remains to remain on your roster. I think it probably bests what you could potentially get with the extra pick.
What I always go back to with Marv, and I agree with what you're saying, I wouldn't change what the Cardinals did, and some of that is the fan in me with the hope for sure, because I approach it a little bit more from that perspective, but for me, it's that Rams game. And I know that I bring that up a lot. Yeah. But there are not a lot of people that have ever been on this planet that can do what Marvin Harrison Jr. did in that game, right? We're talking the instincts that he showed, the yak that he showed, like especially on broken plays, it proved that he was worth the number 4 pick in the draft. It proved that on a talent level, there is a different, I was going to say level again. I didn't want to repeat the word. I can't think, but there's a different level that he can hit, right? There's this ceiling. There's this peak that's somewhere in there on Marvin Harrison Jr. And I believe that they can get that out of him. It's just a matter of, and admittingly in an era, especially in sports, of instant gratification, and you do see some of that instant gratification from some of the wide receivers that you mentioned that win in the same class, you are left a little worried. You are left with a little bit of buyer's remorse of, did I make the right investment? But a lot of times with investments, you make it, and it struggles a little bit. Yeah. And then 2, 3, 4 years down the line, you look back and say, well, I'm glad that I held the line. I'm glad that I stayed in there because my investment paid off.
Are you calling it Bitcoin right now?
No, I'm not personally. But what I'm saying is Marvin Harrison Jr., to me, I'm holding out hope. And I do truly believe that he is going to be one of those players that we look back and we say, man, look at how good he was. Wasn't it hilarious when we held him to the standard his rookie season, where he actually had a pretty decent rookie season, and we were kind of all worried, and then he went on a Pro Bowl level, all NFL level for the next 5 years after that? I think that's still in there. I don't know if it's guaranteed at this point, like I felt like it was at the beginning of the season, but I'm not at the point where I'm throwing up the white flag.
No, not at all. I mean, if you just look at standard projections, like where he's set to finish this season anywhere from like 750 to over 800 yards, maybe a ceiling of 900 yards. And then, you start to see those numbers increase in year 2. We always see, no matter what the position in the NFL, the biggest jump is from year 1 to 2. Yeah. He's a 1,000-yard receiver. That's the floor. Not bad. Not a bad floor. It's we've seen a lot bigger, would have been deemed busts or guys that didn't live up to their draft type. Marvin Harrison Jr. just got this inkling. He's going to be fine. It's going to resemble what you mentioned, where we're going to look back at these times and we're like, man, there was hysteria as far as, concern about Marvin Harrison Jr.'s NFL future, and then hopefully have a good laugh about it.
I really do hope so. And also I think what shouldn't be lost is the fact that if he and I know this is a high bar, but if he somewhat replicates what he was able to do against the Rams, against some lesser opponents coming up for the Arizona Cardinals, he does have a shot to hit a K.
Mm-hmm.
Right? He does have a shot. You have one game against the Rams on the road. Before that, you're taking on the Panthers on the road, and then you end the season against the 49ers at home. I think it's very possible that Marv goes for over 100 yards in each of those games. I think it's possible. I wouldn't bet on it. I think it's always possible. I think he wakes up, and I think it's possible that he can get 100 yards. So there's a chance that to punctuate this season and a larger message to the Arizona Cardinals fans, if he goes over 100 for 3 weeks in a row, somehow gets close to, because at that point when you say you can almost get 90, that's a little bit under 100, right? For the next couple of games. So if he can get that and elevate his game to end this season, like, it's a completely different conversation going in the offseason. So it's on that blame pie that we baked, right?
Sure.
It's on every single ingredient to look themselves in the mirror and say, what can I do to get this blue chip prospect to the point where we're saying he's playing like a blue chip prospect? Because it's in there somewhere. What do you guys think? Let us know down in the comments below. But did the Arizona Cardinals make a mistake by drafting Marvin Harrison Jr., or are we all just overreacting way too early into his career? I think it's all on the table. So you let me know where you fall while we're digging into this blame pie. Of course, you can follow PHNX Cardinals as this Cardinals season approaches its end, Bo. It's been quite a roller coaster of a ride, but you've been strapped in on PHNX Cardinals the whole time. Of course, you can follow them on social media at PHNX_Cardinals. They are live 5 days a week, including pregame, halftime, postgame shows for every single Cardinals game. And of course, you can follow Bo at Bo Brack on social media as well. If you want some more of me, you psychopath, you can find me on PHNX Sun Devils 5 days a week, PHNX Suns 5 days a week. Of course, the Sun Devils marching towards the Big 12 champion, or past the Big 12 championship. I'm just in a completely different month right now, going towards the Peach Bowl. January 1st, we will be having immense coverage of that right here on PHNX Sports. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, make sure you hit the like button, and it's trade season in the NBA, so stick around for all of that as well. We'll see you guys later this week for another edition of Southwest Bias.
Get that stuff out of here. It's Southwest Bias.
We all silly like the mayor.